Hello and welcome to another episode of Voices of SUP, where we chat to some inspirational people in the stand-up paddling community. Now, if you're not a pro subscriber on SUP Boarder magazine, head over there so you're able to access all of the extended videos and the pro tips from our Voices of SUP. But today, we're giving you that extended video right here on YouTube for free. So let's get into introducing our guest today. He's been involved in water sports for all of his career. He turned into a windsurfing professional at a young age. He was crowned the British national champion, the European champion, and he was also ranked 5th in the world. He became involved in water sports media and has directed windsurf movies. He formed the Waterman League, which led to the inception of the Stand Up World Tour and World Series. Actively promotes SUP at a world stage and is the director of the APP World Tour. Let's get to know our voice of SUP today. It's Tristan Boxford. How would you best describe yourself?
No, I mean, I'm definitely, on a personal level, I'm someone who, just is absolutely passionate and in love with being in the water, whatever form that takes. As you mentioned, I grew up swimming and sailing boats. My family was all really obsessed with the water as well, luckily. Both grandparents wanted to be in the Navy. One had to do the Air Force instead because the Navy was oversubscribed. My father was a passionate sailor as well. So it was sort of in my veins and my blood. So it was something that it was so natural to me. My father got one of the first windsurfers, well, not one of the first, but one of the early day windsurfers in the 70s. So there's a picture of me about two years old standing on a windsurf board, trying to pull out the sail. So, it's something that has definitely been a part of my life for a very long time. And as things evolve and as my life has evolved, it's kind of taken me on this journey around all the different sports. I grew up definitely with a sailing kind of wind background. But once I was into windsurfing and explored wave sailing and that parlayed to surfing, the world opened up even more, and waves have been my kind of addicting passion for so many years now in whatever form they come. Now I probably surf 80% of the time or 90% of the time, even windsurf 10%, but whenever it's good windsurfing, I still love to go windsurfing. But yeah, no, in short, I think I'm a mellow person. I travel, I spend a lot of my life traveling, but I'm quite a homebody. I really enjoy being at home. And if there's something positive coming from this crisis we're just living through, is that I really enjoyed being at home with my wife and my dog and going surfing at a local beach and not always packing my bag and going to the next place. So, but then, at the same time, I never get tired of that either. I have been super fortunate in my life to be able to travel a lot, and I've got friends in all four corners of the world, and it's a real pleasure going to visit them. So I'm looking forward to doing that again too. But I'm, taking a moment to appreciate what it is right now.
Nice. You said you come from that background in windsurfing. I read somewhere that you used to windsurf to school down the River Thames.
Yeah, well, I didn't grow up in the windsurfing hotspot of the world. I grew up in Twickenham, which is traditionally a rugby town. Many people who watch rugby, that's the international stadium in England. So, every weekend it was people at the pub celebrating either a victory or a loss. And was what was done there. My brother and I, like I said, we had this water focus. We used to obviously go down to Cornwall in the summer holidays with my dad. And we used to spend time with our grandparents in the water, and they used to live in the south of France. So I used to go down there a lot. But it was an unusual place to grow up for a windsurfer. And so I had to be pretty creative with how I was able to get to go windsurfing. So I was fortunately introduced to it, but obviously living where I did and my parents being busy, having busy professional lives, they didn't have time to take me windsurfing. And so I had to try to get sponsorship to be able to do the things I wanted to do. I did my first contest at 14. It was the under-19 youth nationals, and I'd never been on a longboard windsurfer in my life at that time. And so I was having to figure out how to put the dagger board down, do all this kind of stuff. But then in the slalom, somehow I got second. So it was enough to give me a little bit of a push to try get sponsors. And fortunately, I was able to get a few. But long story short, the reason I gave you that backstory was I was creative at ways to get exposure. And winning a contest would get good exposure. But in the mainstream media, it wasn't big enough for them to really hear what was going on. Whereas if you come up with something eye-catching and different and out of the box, they tend to like a story. And so I went to the papers and said, what do you think about this story about this kid going to school on a windsurfer? Because I lived in Twickenham by the river and my school was in Hammersmith. And so I did it a few times for press, and then it just snowballed to where Japanese television, German television, caught a hold of it. And the funny story was I pitched it first to the Independent newspaper. And I said, look, I'll do it in my school uniform. And they said, oh, no, we don't want to do that. That's very Daily Mailish, right? So anyway, I did it for the Independent, and I had a wetsuit sponsor at the time, and there was incentives for getting exposure in the mainstream press and on the television. And, they don't normally expect that from a water sports athlete because there's not that much exposure for that kind of thing. But I was needing money to go travel. So I then approached the Daily Mail thinking in the back of my head, Independent said it was really Daily Mailish. I left it like 6 months and I did the same story over again in school uniform. So just so I could get the exposure. But yeah, that's what that was about. It's a pretty horrible route to windsurf down. I wouldn't advise it to anyone. But it was a story that helped enable me to go to all the different places I went to as a youngster, earning my place on the competitive circuit.
Yeah, nice. It seems like you've taken that kind of finding that creative form of media and brought it into what you do today in the APP World Tour as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think media is such a powerful tool, and an event. When you do an event, you're only reaching and impacting the people who are at the event, whether they're spectators or people involved. And by media, you have the opportunity to reach a global audience. And, I was very fortunate, as I said, to travel a lot in my life and being all over the world. And you realize how big it is and how many people you can reach and the opportunity there. And really, when we created the Waterman League, it was in that light to create events that provided great media and created personalities and provided careers for people like yourself to travel the world and do the same thing that I was fortunate enough to do as an athlete.
Moving into the stand-up paddleboard side of things, it seems like when you were competing, that there were still the same big names in windsurf as there are now in stand-up paddleboard. You had guys like Sebastian Wenzel at Fnatic, who used to shape your boards. Scott McKercher, who was competing in windsurf, now he has his own brand, Smick. And Jason Polikow with JP Australia. And obviously just before you, Robbie Nash. Yeah, so you had all those top names as now still in the industry in stand-up paddle. Was it a natural progression from windsurfing to paddleboarding? How did that all come about?
Yeah, it was there was a little period in between that. I stopped competing in around 2004 or so. I continued as a kind of an ambassador for my sponsors as I started to diversify into creating a business. I was really focused on this kind of multidisciplined athlete, which back then people really didn't consider that much outside of Hawaii. And I think people like Kai Lenny now has really revolutionized what that means. Justine Dupont, there's all kinds of athletes out there that are phenomenal multi-sport athletes. Kiahi Diaboitz, Ayrton Cozzolino, there's, the list goes on, which is really exciting to see, because back then it was quite not a new concept. In Hawaii, it's a very old concept, but it wasn't something that was really recognized or celebrated. And I really had that in mind. We created an event called the Ocean Games in 2007, produced it for NBC, and we had Jeep as a sponsor. And the sport was focused on, the event was a multi-sport event. It had shortboard, longboard, stand-up, windsurf, kite, surf canoe, and tandem surfing. So it was all forms of riding a wave. And actually, it was really the first competitive SUP surfing event at that time, which is kind of funny when we look back. But we had everyone from Robbie Nash to Dave Kalama to, all the Mark Angulo, all the windsurfing icons. Then we had this new kid called Kai Lenny, who was, I think, 13 years old or 14 years old. And, he came and did everything. Bonga Perkins, Dwayne DeSoto. We had, all the top names from kind of the Hawaii water sports community. So that was, really, in my mind, cemented the idea of this kind of multi-sport opportunity. Unfortunately, there was that economic crisis in 2008 that came about, because after that first Ocean Games, I started getting in pretty developed discussions with the ESPN about the potential of the Ocean Games being a sister property of the X Games, because the surfing had failed within the X Games format, largely because the arena is so different. And it's a completely different mindset, except for the fact that it's still part of that action sports realm. So it was something that was really exciting, and that was the direction I was going at that time. I had to put it on pause and kind of went back to the drawing board. I was living in a good place for it at that time. I was living in Kauai. So I sort of went back and took a step back in my life. You know, the windsurfing career was over. I'd done this new project that had showed opportunity, you know, wasn't sure what was going to come next. And then this new sport called stand-up paddling really started to get my attention. And I started to do it myself a lot in Kauai. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I started seeing people doing downwind runs. I started seeing like this kind of energy that started to build around that time. And, you know, at that time we had, I was good friends with Archie Kalepa and Brian Kealana and all those guys. And in 2009, I went to them with the idea of building an advisory board for these kind of water multi-sport activities and events. And the first project that we proposed was building a world tour for stand-up paddling. It was this growing sport that everybody was kind of jumping on. And the concept started with a 3-event kind of idea that would be in the best waves in the world. Because what we wanted to get across was that stand-up paddling wasn't this archaic 14-foot or 12-foot like cumbersome longboard going through the lineup. There was some really unbelievable athletes that were transitioning to the sport because it's a new challenge. It's something really different. It connects multiple different sports. And for us as a multi-sport organization, it kind of bridged the gap between all the different sports. Traditionally, you're either a shortboarder, you're a longboarder, you're a windsurfer, you're a kite surfer. But this sport, all the different sports were culminating in one sport. You had shortboard surfers using it when the waves are smaller for cross training. You had windsurfers when there was no wind, kite surfers, and so on and so on. So, you know, the uncles really loved the idea. They thought, wow, this would be a really cool thing. We ended up doing an exhibition event in Tahiti in 2009 to kind of launch the concept for it. And we were fortunate enough to get waves at Chopo, which really kind of opened people's eyes to this is something really interesting. And then it just snowballed from there, obviously, with the launch of the tour in 2010.
Back in the early days, you there were some tough times, you know, starting up the Stand Up World Tour and the Stand Up World Series as well. You had a lot on your shoulders, and you were learning a whole lot along the way. It seemed like you were picking up things super quick because you were always adapting and always innovating to really make sure that everything was going to be working. Did you have a mentor helping you, or were you just in tune with what was going on at that time?
No, I'm just, I think, you know, it was definitely a challenging undertaking. I went into it full of passion and excitement, and a lot of people, you know, saying, hurrah, this is going to be great, all that kind of stuff. And speaking to that background in windsurfing, as you said, I was fortunate enough to be friends, and I'd actually was an ambassador for Robbie Nash for many years as a windsurfer. I knew Sven really well from Starboard. So I had a natural relationship with a lot of these industry brands. So when I presented the idea of doing something in stand-up paddling, all those brands had already started to capitalize on it and start building product, and it was a booming market. It was good timing as far as that's concerned. So I did get some great support from those industry brands, and not just, it was a small amount of money in terms of what was needed to achieve it. But just the rallying together, getting athletes to events and all those kind of things was really important, obviously, in building this thing. But as far as, evolving and adapting, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway that if I went back to do it all over again, I would do differently was that, I did it with grunt hard work and determination for the first 7 years. And that comes at a price. On the one side, you manage everything and you own everything and you control it and you build it. On the other side, everything is on your shoulders. If you don't have a flush bank account, it's an absolute nightmare, because cash flows of events, delays in payments from sponsors, from governments, governments, doing all kinds of crazy stuff happened over the first 6 years. And it was a big learning lesson in international business, because there's so much unpredictability, and it's hard to keep people to agreements no matter how cop-dying, especially when you're dealing with that, and especially when you're a small fish. It was a great learning lesson for me, and something I'm quite proud of, that we managed to somehow navigate our way through it. But we learned along the way too. With racing was an interesting one where, in 2012 we launched the World Series, and it started to snowball so quickly because, the complications of running a race event are very limited. If you have a couple of flags to put in the sand, you put a guy on the start line, a guy on the finish line, people can run a race. It's not, rocket science. We've obviously looked to see how we can transform that into a dynamic professional sporting event. But that in its basics is quite easy to do. So the interest to do it was really high. The cost barrier was quite low. But for an international organization to manage all the interest around the world was really complicated, because there wasn't really enough money to support a managed kind of funded world tour. But there was enough interest to flourish into like 1 million events across the globe. So, what that meant was myself and my wife like racing around to everywhere around the world, trying to manage all aspects of the event and deliver a quality product. But obviously our bandwidth was just so overstretched. It was ridiculous. And same goes for Christian Henning, is another hero in my life, who has been amazing at producing the media over the years and continues to do such a phenomenal job and work with what he has to make things happen. And huge credit to him as well, because we were all just trying to keep everything going and moving forward towards where it could get to. And then in 2017 we did our first capital raise finally, something that's incredibly challenging to do while you keep running and going to events and doing all those kind of things. But we managed to get through the first one, and it gave us enough runway to kind of really launch into this new concept of city paddle festivals and how we can bring the sport to the people and all those kind of things that is starting to really evolve and build.
Yeah, no, amazing. Like you said, you do have such a support crew with Christian Henning in the media, and then now Holly in communications, and David Norriott as the head judge as well. He's been with you guys for a long time. But like you said, there's that one person that probably doesn't receive a lot of credit, and that's Squipo, your wife.
She's an incredible.
She's been there since the beginning, and I remember stories of her making food for all the competitors and the workers on site, and handing out the rash guards at surf events, and she's been behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. Has she been a real support and driving factor behind the APP World Tour as well?
Oh, absolutely, in every sense. I mean, there's no way I could have done it without her. And like you said, she filled in so many holes in our organization. It was radical, from taking care of people, which is something that comes very naturally to her. And she's a phenomenal cook. So, people were getting first class, world class cuisine at events, and to doing the scoring, to doing the calculations, to supporting the judges, to, everything. So, definitely I'm an extremely fortunate man. Yeah, no, of course. And why is it so important to you to offer a platform where paddlers can compete on a world stage? I think stand-up paddling, it's a really interesting sport. I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, just the way that it's connected all the different ocean sports together. It's lack of any kind of barrier to entry, meaning it's the most inclusive form of surfing that we could ever get to, because kids from 2 years old to older age people in their 80s can jump on a board and still get active and do things. So on that side, the all access appeal of this sport is incredible. But what happens with these sports, if you don't have a professional platform and you don't have sports stars, it kind of loses its I don't want to say sexiness because it sounds a terrible way to put it, but you need something that kids can look at and go, wow, I want to do that. When I was a kid, I had pictures of Jason Pollock and Robbie Nash and all the stars on the wall, and I dreamt of one day being a professional windsurfer. I did that because there was a professional platform, because there were professional athletes, and it kept me in a really clean, healthy way of life that gave me unprecedented opportunities in my life to experience all kinds of things. And I feel that I was incredibly fortunate for that, because it gave me kind of this, blinded goal and drive to do what I wanted to do, which was be in the water every day and windsurf every day. And that's still the same today. But I think giving opportunity and something for kids to aspire to, and icons that they can look up to. I mean, even if you look at the, some of the stars that have come through our platform, I gave Kai Lenny a wild card in 2010 to Sunset, and everybody gave me grief for like giving a kid a step up, I mean, within a few months, I think everybody shut up because they were like, man, this guy, that's the real deal. He then dominated the sport for many years, and he is who he is today. But then I think, guys like Zane Schweitzer, Connor Baxter, Casper Steinfach, Arturo Rutin, all these guys who have come through the ranks and now have, really, really great careers in the sport, it's because there is something out there that gives them a professional platform. Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think, you've given so many people that step up for their career, and they're still doing it today, which is fantastic to see. And you obviously enjoy doing it. And what is your favorite part about running the tour? I love being connected to what I'm passionate about. Clearly, being in the water is a big passion for me. And if I can create a job around, doing what I love to do, and inspiring people all over the world to get excited about what we do, and providing opportunity for athletes to come through the ranks. I think, that's a really nice opportunity. So, I've always been someone who walks on my own path. I'm definitely somebody who's looking for something exciting to sink my teeth into. And this was definitely a lot bigger than I anticipated when we first started it, in terms of, what it would take to get to where we are and all those kind of things. But now it's exciting because I'm seeing the next stage of development for what we're doing, which will start to unfold over the next few years. So, it's exciting, it's fulfilling, and it's something I'm passionate about for sure.
Yeah, so you've obviously been at the forefront of watching the progression in the sport from both the athletes and also the running of events, and progressing that. How do you see SUP evolving in the future? Do you try and I guess tailor your events to suit the performance of the athletes?
Yeah, I'm definitely always watching what the athletes are doing, seeing what they're interested in. But also, I found that you need to test out new formats and new directions in order for people to understand what they could be. Because people, at the end of the day, athletes want to receive the kind of checklist of what they got to do to get to the top and be the world champion, and that's what they're doing. And you're seeing that in WSL now, where they're toying with the idea of a new format, and there's mixed views about it and all that kind of stuff. But until people can kind of put that into their program of, this is how I'm going to get to the top, you don't know how it's going to be received. Surfing, I think, is a much simpler thing, and it's sort of done on its own. When we started, we had, I remember having an athlete meeting in 2010 before the first event in Sunset. And you had the old school kind of longboarder guys like Dwayne DeSoto and these kind of guys saying there should be a length minimum of 9 feet, which now people would laugh at, because, very few people ride, unless you're riding a longboard SUP, you don't even ride a 9-foot board. So, and certainly in the competitive realm, it's like 7.6 is big on a big board. So, I think it kind of evolved in of itself, and the youth coming into the sport, the way Zane rides, the way Ayrton Cozzolino rides, the evolution that Kai's brought to it, and then in the women's division as well. I mean, I'm blown away every second by the evolution of the women in the last few years, especially seeing the end of the year last year with Vanya coming through, Izzy, stepping up her game for the 100th time, as she continues to do. Ibai Moreno at 41 or 42, I can't remember exactly. It's exciting, it's really exciting to see. But with regards to racing, I think that's a little different. What I've always tried to do is think about the overall product rather than just somebody who wants to go and participate in a race. Because, as I said, everybody with 2 flags can set up a race, people leave, people come back, and it's done. We want to create a product that people can get excited about. Athletes love, because it's super competitive. It gives them the best platform to compete, but it also provides a spectacle that will encourage people to come back and not only participate, but watch, and maybe get inspired to participate in the mass participation elements and all that kind of stuff. And so we're continuously evolving what that racing looks like. We've got some exciting stuff we're going to be launching later this year, and certainly for the 2021 season, obviously this year being a bit of an anomaly. But yeah, I think it's taking feedback from athletes, but it's also looking at where the sport could go in terms of performance and excitement for people watching and doing it.
Yeah, of course. And you've released a new platform, the virtual competition of stand-up paddleboard, surfing, and racing. Anyone can enter that as well if they want to mix it with the pros. Do you want to give us a little insight? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was easy. It started with surfing first, but we were like, wow, everybody's filming these days. Everybody's access to media is so easy. You can film on your iPhone to get a clip. So, the idea was, how do we keep people engaged, athletes excited? And even if you see various different Instagram holders, they'll be pushing each other, challenging each other to do certain things. And it really stemmed from that of, like, how do we create something that inspires everybody to come together and, send in their clips, whether they're top pros or weekend warriors. We wanted everybody to kind of get a chance to be showcased, and create 2 divisions so that everybody's kind of feels counted. But then create the kind of the egg at the end of it is that, there's this amazing trip with the top 3 men and top 3 women, but we given a chance for a weekend warrior, men and women to be able to join them. So it was just something to really keep people engaged, create something exciting around this time where everybody's kind of confined. And now most people, I think, around the world are able to get in the water, so getting clips over July, August should be doable. And then trying to create that level playing field where you don't have to be living at Tahiti to win the event. And then, for the racing I wanted to emulate something that could be really easy, that there wouldn't be this, well, he was, racing in the ocean and he did it over 10 kilometers. So that's not fair. And, how do you handicap that and all that kind of stuff. So we kind of came up with something really simple and straightforward for people to follow. Everybody thinks about speed, and in sprint racing, it's how quickly can you get to that top speed. And we said, well, why don't we just do it that? It's 50-meter course. So, conditions don't really make too much difference. We put out a requirement that it's on relative flat water. There's not like major current running and ocean flow or something like that. And it's just the top speed wins, and the run has to be filmed with the same kind of egg at the end of it of people being able to do a really cool trip.
What do you feel like communities could be doing to feed people back into the competitive side with the APP World Tour? I feel like a lot of people just want to get out there and surf and not really enter the competitive realm. So what do you think, those communities could be doing to really push the sport back into competitive mindset?
Surfing is always a challenging one because it's quite an operation to run a surf event. First of all, you need judges, you need, quite a lot. You need permits, you need all the different stuff. And sometimes it's either it's too much of an investment or you don't have the passionate people in each location to be able to put that together. And then even when it is put together, it's run by friends and family and they're not really professionals at it. And people are upset that the judging wasn't right or, so it's kind of fraught with quite a lot of complications to get it going. So that could be one of the obstacles, and then there's just us basically producing global surf events. But, we're looking at how we can grow it because, like I said, it really is the most accessible form of surfing. I think at the top end now, the performance more exciting than we've ever seen. I mean, the end of last year with Wellington Race and that no one's ever even seen surfing like that. Luis Denise doing aerials like you've never seen. Point Aiki just doing some of the most powerful and explosive performance surfing. And then Izzy doing what she's doing and all the girls I mentioned earlier. It's so exciting and the performance level is so exciting that, I look at surf fans looking at it going, wow, this is radical what these guys are doing. When we went to Barbados at Super Bowl, people were like, they're not going to be able to surf at Super Bowl. I mean, they didn't just surf at Super Bowl. They like linked together sections people didn't think they could link together. And it's exciting to see that evolve. So, I do want to see the competitive side evolve. It's never going to be a mass participation thing like the racing, but I think by growing more of the community appeal and people feeling like it's something that they can connect with and grow with, I think is what we're really focused on over the next few years so that, there are more Zane Schweitzers, Kai Lenny's, Ayrton's coming through the field and coming to the front,
Yeah, like what you said before, I think you need to create that kind of aura of a top athlete that people can aspire to. And I think that's, what a lot of surfers look to, and especially just in the surfing, like with the WSL, pretty much every surfer has their favorite shortboard surfer on tour. And we want to try and create that for stand-up paddleboarding.
Exactly. And I think, you never really grow out of that. I mean, I speaking for myself at 43 years old, like I follow surfing like a Grom. I love watching the best guys. There's guys I like that surf better, and but I feel the same way about stand-up paddling. And I know, in Brazil's been an exciting region for us, even though we don't have an event there right now. We've really got quite a big fan following because there's Leco, who's kind of like the old stalwart now. He's only early 30s, but compared to the young kid, he's the older ambassador. But you got Caio, you got Wellington, you got Luis, you got Leco's brother Mateus, who's just absolutely ripping. Lucas Medeiros, you got Marcio Grillo. It's insane, and I think that's starting to evolve into quite a budding scene of people who follow the tour and follow all the stuff that's going on. So we're trying to really cater to that by creating some Portuguese focused stuff that goes out to them, so that they can really connect with what we're doing. But we want to have that regional approach everywhere. So, I feel like Australia is kind of, your hometown is kind of like the underserved sun at the moment. We haven't had an event there. Something is definitely on the horizon. And I feel like there's quite a big community of surfers there that could really get involved and get active. And we want that to happen.
Especially young kids in Australia, there's a lot happening in that realm. I think they'll be really stoked to get the opportunity to at least, compete in the trials and hopefully get into the main event. And yeah, I think the platform you offer for the young kids, especially with the Nakamakai and things you do with the events around the world as well. But yeah, just stoking out that next generation, really.
Yeah, and that's been really exciting to see in Gran Canaria, especially. We've had really great attendance at the youth event. So kids from all over the world, from France to Haiti, Brazil, all coming to these youth kind of competitions. And so that is a growing element. Obviously it could be a lot bigger, but I think the more we do these kind of things and the more we can initiate programs in each territory, the bigger that will grow.
Yeah, definitely. So you've seen this competition realm grow so much and change a lot over the years with competitors, locations, rule books, all of that. What do you think the biggest lesson you've ever learned would be?
I don't know. I feel in life, I feel life is one big learning lesson. So, every day you learn something new, and that's what makes life interesting. And that's what makes surfing interesting, because it's a complete parallel. Surfing, every day you go out there, you're going to do something that makes you feel like a kook, and then you're going to do something that's going to make your day, and you're going to go home and just think about that until next time you go surf.
Yeah, just that one wave.
Exactly. So, I definitely not wanting to be philosophical about it, but I see a direct parallel with surfing and life, that, life is ever changing. Right now we got this crazy pandemic across the world. There's, protests around the world, and rightly so, for police brutality. There's all the crazy things that are going on that life has to deal with. And what we have to do as humans is figure out how we can adapt to it and figure out how to take the best next step. And I think there's no specific one thing I've learned. I've learned like such a massive amount of lessons over the years that have helped me to look at things differently and look at, just grow, I guess. We're always looking to grow as human beings. And, I hope that I can continue to do that.
Well, Tristan, we'll start to wrap this up. But before we go, we've got what we call the sprint round. It's a short questions. Just want really short answers. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Cool. One board to use for the rest of your life. Would it be a race up, surf up, normal surfboard, foil, downwind, touring, or windsurf?
I would have to stay a stand-up surfboard. Stand-up surfboard. It's the most diverse and can fit so many different categories.
Exactly. You could put a sail on there. Yeah. What's your favorite event that you've been to on tour?
Hard to say. I love Sunset. It's home. Tahiti was magical, and Barbados was incredible this past year. But I love being on a boat in the BVI. I can't really say a favorite. But those would probably be a selection of my favorite ones. Oh, and Patagonia. The race in Patagonia was pretty insane, just as far as a new thing to do.
Yeah, I chatted to Dave Bainey recently. He said he remembers that BVI event like it was yesterday. He loved it.
Yeah, I mean the concept was insane. Just. I would love to be able to do it really properly. We did it. We scraped it together to make it happen, and it was such a challenge. And again, going back to my wife, she was the one who held it together. And it was such a cool event that I'd love to do that again.
Yeah, for sure. Warm or cold water to paddle in? What's your preference?
Oh, warm water for sure.
Warm. Best place to stand up paddleboard?
Oof. Favorite place is either Hawaii or Portugal. Best place, I don't know. I think stand-up paddling is such a diverse sport. It's depends on what's your desire. I love powerful right-hand point breaks. So if there's those around, then it's perfect.
Well, Hawaii and Portugal have both, so that's good.
Exactly.
Who's the best person to sup with?
I really enjoy on my own, actually. No, but best person, good mate. It's like surfing. You go surfing with your good mates and you have a laugh. That's really what it's about.
Yeah. Who inspires you?
My wife. Nelson Mandela. I don't know. I think there's inspiration in every day. I get inspired by so many people across the globe with what they're doing. I don't think there's any specific one person outside of that, but it's inspiring to watch. I've really enjoyed watching Kai Lenny evolve, and there's an element of pride in there as well. But there's also just the boundaries that he's crossed and the way he's done it, with the humility that he's done it, and the just never-ending enthusiasm and excitement about it. That's inspiring.
How many months a year are you usually on the road?
Tough to say. Over the last few years, it was a lot. It was over 6 months, I would say. this year's obviously I haven't been anywhere. So, but yeah, a lot. I'm not sure exactly what the number is. Too much, I would say.
Nice. What are you most looking forward to after COVID-19 passes?
I'm really excited to go back to Hawaii. Hawaii is home for me always. Here's home too. I kind of feel they're my two favorite places in the world. So as long as I can keep going back and forth between the two, things are good. I'm looking forward to get the show back on the road. I'm excited to see all the athletes in action again and have some great events. I'm excited for just the world to come back to normal a little bit. And I hope that, some lessons have been learned through this time. One of the biggest things I noticed during quarantine was the peace and calm and clean oceans, clean skies, all the kind of little changes that we all noticed. If people are outside to that we do a lot of damage on a daily basis. Perhaps we can figure out ways to be better and do more. So I guess those are the things I look forward to.
Nice. Thanks, Tristan. Anything else you would like to add to this conversation?
No, I'm ready for the Bow Nixon return tour, though.
Oh, yes. Well, I was thinking like the end of this year, but you have an event in Canary Islands? Yeah. Well, I don't know.
1,000%. So make it out there, man.
Yeah, hopefully. If not, next year. But I'm looking forward to it. I need to get some practice in. There hasn't been many great waves over here, but we'll see.
You come down here to Portugal and get some right-hand point breaks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that. Anyway, thanks for joining us, Tristan.
My pleasure. It was a pleasure to chat with you, Bill.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Voices of SUP. Really hope you gained some insights and learned a lot from our chat with Tristan. I really did enjoy talking with Tristan and learning about where the future's going, how he's adapting his formats to suit the athletes, and what they can do to really lift their performance as well. But stay tuned, we have lots more episodes coming your way here on Voices of SUP. Feel free to like or comment below, and thanks for tuning in.